Tofu to everyone. In talking about the Diamond Sutra, before we get to the Diamond Sutra itself, we really need to have an understanding of what we're studying and where it came from. Our situation is one in which we see the Diamond Sutra, we don't quite know exactly where it fits, and we don't quite understand emptiness. The ancient masters have said that if we want to see Buddha nature, we first have to understand emptiness. So the in Chinese, the words here, Kong Xing, emptiness, and Fo Xing being the Buddha nature. We have to understand this this term, emptiness. And we talked about this last week and talking about how Buddha nature is inclusive of everything rather than exclusive, and that there's nothing there. It's quite to the contrary. It's that because everything belongs to the Buddha nature, that everything is empty, because there is not anything that's there in terms of conceptual. In order to understand this, I went to some background material so that you would have a better idea before we get into the Diamond Sutra and understand the wording there. Because if we don't have this basic foundation, we're not going to be able to understand the sutra itself. To do that, we have to go to some very deep material. One of them is Maitreya's Dharma Vibhanga Sutra, and I'll show you the book that I'm reading from, and it says Dharmata Vibhanga Sutra. And I want to go to the very end of this. Quite a while back, I did a series of lectures on this, which was something very, very important. And in this sutra, they talk about non-conceptual wakefulness. And I just wanted to read you one of the passages towards the end of this. And it said, as for directing the mind, so this is what we're doing, is we're directing the mind. A person who wishes to enter non-conceptual wakefulness. So non-conceptual wakefulness is awakening. We're not talking about enlightenment, we're talking about awakening. And so they're directing the bodhisattva to a non-conceptual wakefulness. And he says that bodhisattva should direct the mind in the following way. Due to not knowing suchness, that which is not true is wholly imagined. The so-called entirety of seeds causes the appearance of duality where there is none. This distinct continuum are based on that. And then it reads a little further down. What then does not appear, the appearance of what that is not the appearance of the intrinsic nature. When that does not appear, when the illusion does not appear, not the what is one is looking at, but the illusion that is something separate, that is something that is belongs to me. I look at this room and say this belongs to me, then this is not non-conceptual wakefulness. So when that doesn't appear anymore, the intrinsic nature appears. And this is where the Diamond Sutra is trying to get you to. It's trying to get you to this point where the intrinsic nature appears, and it appears on its own. It doesn't, you don't force it, and you don't subdue the mind by force in any way. It just comes in this way. And then the very last part of this, the sutra says the non-existent phenomena that appear are likened to illusions, dreams, and so forth. This really reflects the end of the Diamond Sutra, does it not? That all that we should think of this fleeting world, a bubble in a stream, a flash of lightning in a summer cloud, etc. So it's interesting because as we begin to look at that, we go, wait, this one here, Maitreya Milafo, Dharmata Vibhanga Sutra, and then we've got the Diamond Sutra, and which one is the first? Because this sutra, Maitreya's, is from the Tathagata Garbha series, which is afterwards, and it's a refinement which they consider to be the third turning of the Dharma wheel, where one is now looking at Buddha nature. So how does the Diamond Sutra fit into this? And so we continue, and I wanted to run through a passage of the Sutra of Queen Sharmala Devi's Lion's Roar Sutra. Oh, excuse me, I take that back. I apologize. It's the Vilamakruti Sutra. They're both contained in this book here, but I want to go with the Vilamakruti Sutra. And in this sutra, we have a passage that is talked about, and here it says, this body is like a bit of foam that cannot be grasped. This body is like bubbles that do not last very long. This body is like a mirage generated from thirst. This body is like a banana tree with nothing solid within. This body is like a phantasm arising from confused views. This body is like a dream, illusory view. This body is like a shadow manifested through karmic conditions. This body is like an echo dependent on causes and conditions. This body is like a cloud which changes and disappears in an instant. This body is like lightning, unstable from one moment to another. And doesn't that also echo what the Diamond Sutra ends at its conclusion? Is very interesting, because when I wrote this, or when I read this, I put here compared to the Diamond Sutra, and then I put the date second to the 5th century, and to me, I was looking at it and going, okay, which one came first? And so in terms of looking at it, we try to see this in this way to say, okay, which one borrowed from the other one? And what is happening here is these Tathagata Garbha Sutras actually were presented first. And the Diamond Sutra is coming in and trying to look at things and trying to see this idea of not self, and say we first start with not body. We start with impermanence. We start with the idea of emptiness. And so the Diamond Sutra is one that presupposes that there's been a study of these very profound sutras beforehand in order for you to get there. So when you get there, it's like you are going to a chess tournament and you just barely bought a chessboard, and you're going, wait a second, how do I play? And how come I'm against these people that they're 5-10 moves ahead of me? It's like as soon as I move one move, they already are laughing and going, the game is over. And so you have a difficulty in terms of understanding what is happening. And that's what the Diamond Sutra is something that kind of, a lot of times the way I present things, a little bit different than other Dharma presenters. Sometimes people tell me, oh, you teach too deep, and I'm like an instructor standing by a pool, and they go, excuse me, what is mine? And or how do I swim? And I just push them into the deep end. Boom. And you're there, you're floundering, but at some point you're going to figure it out. The Diamond Sutra does the same thing. It pushes you in the deep end and presupposes that you have this background to study it. But if you don't have the background, you can still do that. You just have to flail away until you finally get it. Because in fact, that which is there cannot be taught by words and phrases. It has to be taught by contemplation. And so the Diamond Sutra puts you in a place where you have to examine things, not with your intellect and the logic of samsara, but a much more profound logic. And this is kind of it's humorous in some ways, because we cling to this side and we are self-proving, saying, I just took a breath. I just said something. I just thought something. I just felt something. And so you're reaffirming yourself, but then you don't really say, hey, Gilbert, I was just wondering, where did you come from? What do you mean? Where did I come from? Where did you come from? What brought you here? Where are you going? I don't know. Don't you think you ought to know that? And like, where is this appearing? Now, I'm appearing to you on your screen at home. But if you didn't have the screen, would I appear? And if you wanted to do something else with your screen, every time you turned it on, there I was teaching the Dharma, it would be very frustrating. But the screen always is the same. It always allows reflections upon it, and they're temporary. They're not real. Am I really in your living room or your bedroom or wherever you're listening to me? Am I there? Can I touch you? I think not. And therefore it is suchness. But we say we think, and therefore we are. And we're constantly proving ourselves in this way. But imagine if everything is so far beyond this, so incredible, that one can go from one point to another in a split instant, can travel the entire galaxy, the universe, from one universe to another. You say, well, that's like Star Trek stuff. That's like crazy. Yet we still imagine that, but we can't imagine that this mind is capable of that. So we condemn it to this little charade of a play that it plays out time after time after time. And so you come into the world, okay, what's the script? Who are my parents? And what's happening here? Okay, what am I supposed to do? Right now I have to cry because I'm cold and hungry, and I'm scared because I just came out of this hole. And I'm here. And then you, little by little, you begin to figure out what your role is. Part of your role is here with acquired karmic habitual patterns, and part of it comes with you out when you're born. We don't see this. We don't understand this. Master Sheng Yen used to say that the scientists can tell you how you were born to your parents, but not why. And we have to begin to expand our this mind, to access it. But in order to access it, we have to begin to bang away at, in the Dharma Vibhanga Sutra. It was banging away at the body and going to this what's called non-conceptual wakefulness. Non-conceptual wakefulness is just mind as it is. When we can do that, then the intrinsic appears. What is the intrinsic? Fo Xing, the Buddha nature. Buddha nature appears. Because it's always been there. We've just clouded it up so we can't see it, and there it is. In this way, the words stop right there, because we cannot say, there it is, there I went through this gate, and now I have this non-conceptual wakefulness. It isn't in that way. That's why they say it's not your body. Master Ling Chi would say, let your liver teach you the Dharma. Let your spleen listen to the Dharma. Can it listen to it? Can it expound on the Dharma? No, it's just parts of the elements. But in it of itself, it is just conceptual, created conceptually, habitually. Why? Because our parents had the interest of procreating. The parents before that had the interest, and it keeps going in this way. And then voila, we appear. And why do we appear to these particular parents? Something there was going and searching for the next place to come up. It wasn't by happenstance. Everything that's there is connected, and that's the intrinsic nature, but that's also the emptiness of things. When we have this emptiness, it is all inclusive, but it's not conceptual, because all of that is the Buddha nature. All of that is there, but it's transitory. That aspect of it is constantly changing. So if they plop the Buddha down into this room, there would be an awareness of the room, awareness of what is here, and an immediate functioning as to why the Buddha would appear in this room for the sake of whatever needs to be done to harmonize with that. The Buddha wouldn't come in and say, no, I think you need to change those flowers, and you need to take that clock out and do this and do that. It wouldn't be in that way. It would see clearly from causes and conditions, all these things are naturally appearing. There's no happenstance to why the room appears the way it is, or this talking meatball is talking to you at this moment. All of that would be clear. So this is very, very important in terms of understanding it. And so we have to understand that aspect of emptiness before we get to the Diamond Sutra, because if we don't understand that aspect of emptiness, we get confused. And what we do is we attach to this emptiness. And in attaching to the emptiness, we're lost, because everything, nothing matters. Everything is empty. But we don't really understand the profoundness of what that means, because we could only see it from the samsaric side. And in the samsaric side, we could only conceptualize about it. And this conceptualization keeps us from penetrating into the profoundness of that emptiness that's there. And so it's very interesting. And the Diamond Sutra doesn't talk about emptiness. It just shows it in different ways. And it does two things. It shows and says, oh, you cannot know this by this way. There is not somebody there. There's no one that achieved these realizations. The Buddha cannot be known by these 32 marks. And so it's looking like it's the process of negation, which it is, what it's doing is it's dispelling your reliance on the samsaric habitual patterns and this world as being, let's say, the gospel of nature, and saying, perhaps it is in the dream, you follow the rules that are there, and that this this bottle will fall down because of gravity. In this dream, it is how it works. It was very, very interesting. Right, even before the Buddha's awakening, when he started figuring out that something wasn't quite right with his the ascetic practice of depriving the body from even small comforts or things, where you're eating dirt and roots and starving to death, and he went to the river, and he got like a twig with a leaf, and he put it in the water, and the water was flowing in this direction. So he said, if I am correct about this twig will flow upstream. And lo and behold, instead of going this way, it went upstream. The significance of that is that the Buddha nature is capable of doing things, is capable of all these things, and it's not subject to the laws of samsara. It is in harmony with the laws of samsara, and that's different. That's different. But these kinds of feats of things are capable because the Buddha nature encompasses not only samsara, but everything else. And so it's able to superimpose onto the samsaric world this real supreme truth. But we can't see that. But it is something that the Buddha cannot completely just stop the whole carousel and say, okay, all of you who are on this carousel, you are all enlightened and you don't have to be here anymore. And I'm going to take you to wherever. It doesn't work in that way, because all of that, nevertheless, is still Buddha nature. It's a dream, but it's within Buddha nature. And the Buddha nature of things is all of that that's in the dream, that's there, is being governed by pratika samappada. Causes and conditions never fail. So to those within the dream and in a conceptual state of dreaming, this would be something that would be an illusion, a dream. Oh yeah, you're going to make this twig go upstream. That's impossible. That, how is that? That's ridiculous. I think you've been away from society too long. You need to come back to the palace and have some grapes and music or whatever. And this is the way we think. We think in the opposite way, and it's kind of very interesting, because when we talk about that, we think, oh, that's just made up. You're making all this stuff up. It's not real. Who are you to say it's not real? It's not the supreme truth. Think about this. Challenge yourself to challenge yourself to come up and say that this is not real. That what I'm talking about in terms of this emptiness, what I'm talking about Buddha nature, that this is an illusion, and what you are and where you're sitting, everything is real. we never get to that point. That is why there was these very profound sutras went point by point by point in terms of doctrinally to do this. This is why Nagarjuna did what he did of negating all aspects of time, form, and self, because he was looking at it from this logic, and even using samsaric logic, it didn't make sense. So we have to look at this kind of like the quantum physicist outside the box. We cannot get there from working within and relying on this. Now, in some ways, that sounds like ridiculous. In some ways, it sounds like, Gilbert, you're just making this stuff up. No, and if I'm making this stuff up, it's been made up for 2,500 years. I'm not saying anything that isn't there. The reason I use the books and the source materials is so that you see that if I'm making it up, those masters from the past made it all up too. But they went through this gateless gate. It is their experience and their heart that drives them. It's that they have that enables them, from the author of the Diamond Sutra to the Buddha Nature Treatise, to all of Maitreya's sutras. All of those are presented for our benefit. But we have to also paddle. It's not just that we have to look at at what is there and read the words and think by virtue of osmosis, it's going to go in this way. This notion of self-absorption, so that we see the self nature of the mind, is very, very important. We have to let go of the underpinnings of what we think is the premise of this world and the rules of this world, and say, what if it was a dream, like the quantum physicists? What if it's in this way or that way? And from there they begin to think, and then they're outside the box. They have not yet realized that, but at least they're working on it. They've got a paddle in the water, and they're on a path to try to discover that. So they don't necessarily suspend completely all the rules of the samsaric world and all the scientific rules, but they surmise that perhaps there may be something that's beyond what they understand. And so this is very interesting. Actually, something that I had read a long time ago, where they were talking about that the universe, somehow they weighed the universe, and they went, you know what, I don't know, something's very peculiar, because this universe, based on all of the mass that's in it and everything that's there, is about half the weight of what should be there in the universe. And they kept working on it and working on it until they figured out that the world, or this universe, is filled with not just matter, but antimatter. And so the antimatter is there that has not manifested into matter. The ancient Chinese would refer to this as substantial and insubstantial, but it's beyond our view, our understanding. But it kind of looked like this. I think some of you have seen this symbol before. And it is this flowing, constantly changing, but they began to understand it. Here, how many thousand years ago the symbol comes up to represent precisely that. And then the scientists look at that And they go figure, this is how it is. So we continue on, because I've already spent a half an hour preface of what I'm going to talk about, but I've already decided that I want to come back and have more of a series on the Diamond Sutra. So this is the Diamond Sutra part 1, because there's no way I'm going to get through it. But this is very, very valuable for you to be able to fathom what the sutra talks about. And I want to talk a little bit about the Buddha Nature Treatise, and because this also fits in with this, and this is coming from the book called Buddha Nature, Sally B. King. And I've used this to teach many a lecture in my regular Monday night class. But it's valuable in terms of looking at how we proceed to find out about Buddha nature, because the Diamond Sutra is not about emptiness. It's about Buddha nature. That's why they refer to it, the Tathagata. So this thus come one that's there. And so actually it's Tathagata, thus gone one, Tathagata, thus come one. It doesn't make any difference. It's thus one is gone beyond the idea of samsara. But the important part is thus come when he comes back into samsara to present the profound to those here, and those we cannot understand was presented in higher levels, such as to seat to heaven, and Maitreya, Milafo, presenting this and presenting it down to us in a way that we're able to understand it. So when we read this profound, it takes some time for us to absorb that. It is not just simply in reading the words, unless one has the deep root to be able to understand it in that moment. In fact, it was Hui Neng who had such a deep root that all he heard was somebody reciting as they were going by that don't abide anywhere. And he stopped immediately and said, wait a second, what did you just say? Say it to me again. Where did you hear this from? And it made perfect sense, complete sense instantaneously, because of his past practice in different lifetimes and his practice in this lifetime. But for us that don't have as deep of a root as that, it takes us time. But we all have that potential. We all have the potential because the Buddha nature runs within all of us. We discard the body with respect to this analysis. Not necessarily we discard the body and are sitting there waiting for the bus to come, the Buddha nature bus to come to get us. But we discard the body as somewhere in which to search for this supreme truth. We use the body as we use all of the rules of nature within samsara, but we understand that those rules of nature do not govern everything, only governs within the dream. Upon awakening, then the awakening is that there is rules beyond that. And those major rule, which then explains to us samsara, which we never figured that out, is pratika samappada, causes and conditions never fail. Because of our erroneous views, we're stuck in this dream. Like a Buddha that's slumbering there, but can't wake up. And the mother or the father is shaking, wake up, wake up, wake up. And you go, and then you go back to sleep again. And wake up, wake up. I'm hungry. I want a donut. Back to sleep again. And you are in this way. you can't awaken. But when there's a time when you can actually awaken, then the first thing you realize is Pratika Samappada, causes and condition never fail, which explains the samsaric world. Why? Because that intrinsic nature that's there is the Buddha mind. Pratika Samappada is the Buddha mind. How it functions, but beyond our simple understanding that the mind is, that the samsara is governed by Pratika Samappada, the cause condition never fail. There's more profound meaning to Pratika Samappada. It is the Buddha mind. It's your intrinsic nature. But when I say your intrinsic nature, I shouldn't say your, because then you start attaching to it and say, I want to see it. I want to see that. Do you want to see that, Gilbert? Oh, most certainly. I want to see my intrinsic nature. It has nothing to do with this meatball that's talking to you right now. What? Yeah, it's not the meatball. It is the very nature of mind that's there, that's inseparable from everything, that produces this illusory fabric that we call the world. And you go, I knock here, doesn't seem illusory to me. Well, as I say very often, come back in 100 years and let's have this conversation. And then you'll see it's illusory. So the most important thing is you've got to try very hard now. Now, in the Buddha Nature Treatise, they talk about 4 meanings of Buddha nature. And the first one is the inseparability of all dharmas before and after realization. So this inseparability means everything is interconnected. The law of dependent origination, Pratika Samappada is what they're talking about. And this is the first meaning of Buddha nature. They call it the Dharmakaya. Now, I'm sure you've heard this word before. We often refer to it as the mind ground. And so you often see this in my my pictures, and you guys have seen this so many times, but one of these days is going to make sense to you that if we see something, an ocean, it's the mind ground, it's reflected on the mind ground. So whatever the mind ground, whatever due to causes and conditions, things would appear there. If one has an interest in money, issues of money will appear, whether they're that I have money or I need money or I want more money, whatever it is, will appear naturally on the mind ground. Why? Because its causes and conditions never fail. So this is the Dharmakaya. The second meaning of Buddha nature is this nature under all conditions is thus. There's this idea of suchness. The idea of suchness presupposes it's not conceptual. It is just in this way. We see things very, very clearly. It's very funny, but because to me, the Christians, they were kind of on their way to this, but where we talk about thus I've heard, they complete their prayers with amen. So be it. This is thusness. That is the way it is. So be it. But they missed it. They just used that as saying, the prayer's over. Now we can get on with eating or whatever. Okay. Or whatever's happening. But they lost the essence of the thusness of that. And that is something that is very, very important. Now, the next part, the third one, is Buddha nature has nothing to do with false thoughts or inverted teachings. The original nature of the mind is still. Now, this idea of stillness is not one that can even possibly be fathomed by words and phrases. It must be experienced in order for one to see that. I shouldn't say that way. Erase that. In order for the realization of mind to be, how would you say, accepted, and this slumbering aspect of the Buddha mind to be awakened, only upon that can one really look at the stillness and truly fathom even the emptiness of things. But it is still, but we go, well, what does still mean? Like, was I still long enough? No, you still have to keep going. Okay. How about now? Was I still? No, it's not that way. It's not that way. The stillness is also let's say, a characteristic of mind. What we don't understand is we think that emptiness defines mind. Emptiness is a characteristic of mind, but the Buddha nature is so much more than that. What more is it? It's thus. There is no way for me to explain that to you. Even if it was, it would just be what Master Ling Chi says, trashy talk. It wouldn't help you one iota. This is something that you have to practice and practice until there's no more you. What? Well, who said that? That's where you start. And so the fourth is the original nature is still. The third was, I'm sorry, I skipped one there. Has nothing to do with false thoughts or inverted teaching. So this is important because all of this we realize is conceptual. One thing that's very important that's been stated in various sutras is that we have the reliance on, and we take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, the three jewels, right? But the Sangha belongs to samsara, the Dharma belongs to samsara. Only the Buddha is the supreme truth. Consider that. Only the Buddha is the supreme truth. The Dharma and the Sangha belong to samsara. On the basis of these meanings are established the four names of the Buddha. The first one, because we talked about this already, is Dharmakaya. And the second one is Tathagata or Tathagata, whether it's thus come one or thus gone one. The third is called the supreme truth, because it is neither false nor inverted. And the fourth is because of its aboriginality. Let me be clear about aboriginality. It's called parinirvana. But these are things that are important. And I'm running out of time, so I just have to talk a little bit here, where it talks about this supreme truth. And it says the supreme truth is a corrective name for those scattered and turbulent minds. That is the early stage of a bodhisattva. So there's two types of confusion with two burgeoning bodhisattvas. The first one thinking of emptiness as nothingness, and that once we get rid of all of that, everything is empty. And the other thinks that emptiness is something that really exists, something that should be cultivated and attain. I want to experience nothing. Well, you're never going to be there. What? You're not going to be there. If you're nothing, you're nothing. So what does that even make any sense for you to practice something to obtain nothingness if there's nothing going to be there? But there still is. The supreme truth is there. The Buddha mind is there. That's why emptiness cannot define the Buddha mind. It's an aspect, but cannot define it because the Buddha mind is so much more of that without being anything. That's why it has this emptiness. It is just the thusness of it. I'm so confused. You should be. You should be, because this is what drives you. You want to figure this out, put all these pieces together, but it is in the practice, dhyana, chan, that this comes together and the wisdom will manifest. So there's a verse in the Buddha Nature Treatise that talks about this. It says, not a single thing to be removed, not a single thing to be added. What is should be perceived as it is. Seeing the real, liberation is obtained. Because adventitious defilements are empty, they have no connection with the Dharma Dhatu. The supreme Dharmas not being empty, the supreme Dharmas, this is the supreme truth, is not empty, are inseparable from the Dharma Dhatu. So everything that appears in here and everything that the mind's eye is aware of, it's inseparable. It only appears within mind. Even if these are fundamentally empty because they're constantly changing, just like the image on your screen that you're viewing me, I'm here, I'm not here, I'm here again. And if it was permanent, then I would always stay on your screen, and then you take it back to T-Mobile or wherever you go to and say, this thing doesn't work. I just have this guy constantly appearing on my screen. But when you see it in this way, then you understand this emptiness is something else. Now, with the remaining time I have, we begin the Diamond Sutra. So it's only taken us three classes to be able to get to the Diamond Sutra. And honestly, I would be remiss if I just started talking to you from the very first class and talk about thus I heard. Because if I did that, it would be such a tremendous useless exercise. But what I really want to do is I want to give you something that's a benefit, and being able to start. If we cannot do this in the right way, there's no reason to do that. So chapter 1, we talked about thus I heard. And very interesting, because these are the words of Ananda. Ananda is has been instructed by Shakyamuni Buddha to begin every teaching with the words, thus I've heard. And it's Evanmaya Shrutan in Sanskrit. This is very important because we were talking about this thus is the thusness of the Tathagata. So from the very beginning, you're already Tathagata, and then I heard. But it's already beginning with thusness. So this is not something you append to it like amen at the end of a prayer. This is the profound. If you understand thus, you don't have to read anything else. But you just gloss right over that. But it's there right from the very, very beginning. I heard. Okay, let's see what you heard. This is Ananda's words. Then the next words that you will hear will be those of the Buddha and first of all, Subhuti. And so it begins, and it's very interesting. I'm going to read you the first part in whole and then break it down. And it says, once the Bhagavan was dwelling near Shravasti at Anthapindara garden in the Jeddah forest, together with a full assembly of 1,250 bhikshus and many more fearless bodhisattvas. One day before noon, the Bhagavan put on his patched robe, picked up his bowl, and entered the capital of Sarvasti for offerings. After begging for food in the city and eating his meal of rice, he returned to his daily round in the afternoon. He put on his robe. He put his robe and bowl away, washed his feet, and sat down on the appointed seat. After crossing his legs and adjusting his body, he turned his awareness to what was before him. A number of bhikshus then came up where the Bhagavan was sitting, and after touching their heads to his feet, they walked around him to the right 3 times and then sat down on one side. So this is very, very important, but we read this and boom, we go, we want to get to the meat of this, but this is it. This is the Diamond Sutra right here. What? I didn't see anything. I mean, he just went to the city, begged for food, got his bowl, put it away, sat down, and then he just was ready. Oh, all of this is reflecting mind in an ordinary and mundane way. This is what we do. So even though it ends and it says all this you should consider this fleeting world is this, nevertheless, the Buddha is in harmony with all of this. Not only that, but he's doing it perfectly in his daily life. I remember going to retreats or being with Shifu, Master Sheng Yen, and watching him, and watching in awe of how he carried himself. And he was so aware, so calm, so engaging. He was perfectly doing the things that he needed to do. Just that, nothing more. And that was his practice. Again, I repeat, that was his practice. In this moment, this present moment, and you'd always say the Buddha's in the present moment. So if the Buddha's in the present moment, wouldn't you want to be in accord with the Buddha? So you're there and and would you be mindful of what you're doing? Would you pick your teeth in front of the Buddha? There's the Buddha and you're like that. It's very funny because Chinese are very, very polite in the way they are, and they will cover their mouth sometimes when they're eating or even when they're talking. You know, it's very interesting. You know, Westerners were always like trying to pick this and pick that and talking with our mouths open. No. And I'm not just saying the Chinese are superior. I'm just using it as a contrast that in every moment, if the Buddha is present, wouldn't you want to accord with the Buddha? You know, Gilbert, what are you doing? You know, how are you going to explain that to the Buddha? I'm using this in kind of an interesting way to present to you that the Buddha is in this moment. Master Sheng Yen, his behavior, not 100%, but almost 100% of the time when I saw him, his behavior was impeccable to the environment that he was in, supremely flowing through it, seeing the things as they are. If he needed to be kind to you, he could be kind to you. If he needed to rebuke you, he could rebuke you. Not because he got angry, but because that was what he necessarily needed to do to portray at that moment. Like I say, I'm not saying he was perfect. He was not the Buddha, but he strived to be the Buddha. Here in this lesson, the very first chapter, the Buddha is being the Buddha. Very incredible. The Buddha's being in this way, that just doing the normal things, but impeccably, non-conceptually. And at the very end, as he's doing all the things he needs to do, he puts his robe away, puts his bowl away, does all these things. And then what does he do? Then he turns his awareness towards the group. So now he's doing all these things, adjusting himself, and then he's there. He's turning his awareness towards the group. When I present the Dharma to you, I turn my awareness to you so that you may benefit as much as I'm possible of communicating this Dharma, this supreme truth. And as right now I have realized, I'm not saying I'm way up, I'm not, okay? But as I've realized and what I want to present, I've turned my awareness. The awareness is very interesting because the awareness is in it, it contains the present moment. And it contains a non-conceptual wakefulness. It is awake. It is aware of all things, but in a state of equanimity. In the state of equanimity, all things that are appearing in mind are there perfectly due to pratika samappada cause and conditions. And they're reflecting the truth in that moment. If the mind is in accord with this, the mind is not other than the Buddha mind. And so what Shakyamuni Buddha is reflecting here is the perfection of the Buddha mind. Now, to everybody else, they're just watching him, you know, and they're looking at him going, what is he doing? What is he doing? Look at him. What is he doing? Subhuti is like, oh my gosh. He is correctly reading what is happening here. He's correctly reading it. And I haven't finished with this, but I want to jump so that it becomes clear to you for the next one. I just want to read and jump ahead for a moment, and then you'll understand that he comes up to the Buddha, and so, you know, he gets down on his right knee, bares his shoulder out of respect, and puts his palms together. All of this is a perfect act, you know, of reverence to the Buddha. And he has his eyes staring at the Buddha. I shouldn't say staring, but looking at the Buddha when he's asking him this. And so he's not like, oh, Buddha, I just want to ask you this question that looks really uncomfortable. It looks like you're hiding something or you're doing that. So sometimes when I talk to people and their eyes go one way or another, I know there's something that they might be concealing they don't want to talk about. But here, Subhuti is like this, saying, you know, the world honored one, and he's talking to him and looking straight at him. And he's saying that here, He says, it is rare, Bhagavan, most rare indeed, Sugata, how the Tathagata, the Arhat, the fully enlightened one, blesses fearless bodhisattvas with his best blessings. And it is rare, Bhagavan, how the Tathagata, the Arhat, etc., entrusts fearless bodhisattvas with the greatest of trust. So he's talking about bodhisattvas, these fearless bodhisattvas, and this. I'll go back and talk about the meaning of those words in the next class. But he says that even so, Bhagavan, if the noble son or daughter should set forth on the bodhisattva path, how should they stand? How should they walk? How should they control their thoughts? So this is the first question that he's asking the Buddha. And the reason he's asking this question in this way is because he observed them. He saw the impeccability of this perfect practice of a Buddha, a perfect Buddha. Where the others did not see that, he saw that. Bhuti was there and he saw clearly. This is incredible. So where we're reading it and we miss it completely, and we want to get to the meat, we miss the first word, which is thus. We miss the next part where the Buddha is explaining how all this works. It's just amazing. And then he says, now truly listen. So we'll get to this next week, but I wanted to show you how this starts and how deep this is. Is it from the first chapter, it is presenting this incredible, profound Dharma, not by words, but by experience, by realization, by the awareness of the mind. Subhuti, aware of the Buddha mind that is so still and so clear in that moment. This is what the Diamond Sutra is all about. Now we're ready to get into the Diamond Sutra next week. So I'll stop there and take questions. Thank you.
Yeah, now we'll open up a Q&A for about 20 minutes. So please, if you have questions, you can raise your hand or type the question in chat room.
No questions again. It's like you have to prime the pump with you guys. You should have a lot of questions.
I think we have a question from Chris.
Lydia came up first.
Oh, okay.
Christoph.
Oh, yeah. So Chris, you can go ahead first, and then next is Vasily.
Okay, go ahead. Unmute yourself, Christoph.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Master Gilbert. I would like to ask a question concerning what you have said about Sangha and Dharma not belonging to, belonging to samsara, and only Buddha that doesn't belong to samsara. But isn't that so that if Buddha doesn't belong to samsara, then Sangha and Dharma also do not belong to samsara?
It is just simply to point the perfection of the Buddha. We could say the Buddha mind, and that that we use the Dharma and the Sangha as vehicles in this world to bring about change and bring about the elimination of ignorance. But those are vehicles that are pointing to the Buddha mind that is beyond the samsaric realm. That's why it's that way, and that gives you a different perspective as to how to practice. All of this is done in this way so that's very, very clear that what's there, just like Chan says, that Chan is beyond words and phrases. So we nevertheless talk, but we understand it's beyond these words and phrases, beyond all conception, even the conception of a Sangha or conception that there's a Dharma. And where they say, you know, where the Buddha would say, what do you think, Subhuti? Has the Buddha ever, you know, talked about the Dharma, right? And you go, what are you talking about? But you're seeing it from a non-conceptual side. So it's in this way. So use this kind of like it hit you. And when you use that to contemplate so that you can go deeper into it. And you just keep, right now you kind of scratch the surface and you see a vein of gold. Just keep digging there, okay? It's good.
Thank you.
So now we're getting all kinds of questions. Vasily is asking, can you please recommend some useful literature on the Sutra? Can you recommend some literature on the Diamond Sutra? And next will be Miranda.
I've read a lot of different literature on the Sutra. Actually, I mean, a lot of the literature is all the ancients. A lot of the Sutra, I don't think is that helpful. There's some, and some of it's doctrinal by scholars, and a lot of the doctrinal stuff by scholars really misses it completely. It's really frustrating to read what they're saying. But the one that I think that I've been using kind of as a benchmark is this one, which is Red Pine, the Diamond Sutra. And just simply because his style and my style of presenting are very, very similar, which is to present historical background and the doctrinal background. You know, what I do in addition to that, which he probably couldn't do in the book, is the practice background. So to me, those three things have to be there in terms of it: the principle, the practice, you know, in terms of it, and the historical side as to where this all comes from and the explanation of the words. So I think that's probably your best bet to do that in terms of it. It's not going to tell you, it's not going to, how would you say, you're not going to get a realization simply by reading the words, but it directs you in a correct way to look at the words so that one can penetrate through them. Okay. Next one.
Thank you very much for the talk, Gilbert. It's always very enlightening, always something new, even though I've heard your Diamond Sutra talk a few times. So my question here is causes and conditions. How do we apply what we know from, or what has been taught to us from the Diamond Sutra in the situation of causes and conditions, and how the causes and consequences come about? What I'm referring to is, for example, we have a rising of our thoughts. Let's say if it's a rising of a very negative thought, and we're trying to be in the present moment, and then this keeps coming up and coming up and coming up. And then here I'm thinking, okay, that's causes and conditions, it's causing this to come up. I should just accept it, and it would just go away from causes and consequences later on. So, but then it's still swirling around our heads. So so I'm sort of like thinking how I'm going to apply what we've learned into that sort of example. Do you have any advice? Do you have any recommendations as to how we should practice? Thank you.
Yeah, it's very interesting because causes and conditions, particularly Samapada, is very simple. I mean, it's really, really simple. That's why I always talk about if you plant a melon seed, you get a melon plant. It is as simple as that. No, even the Christians borrowed this notion in theirs, where they talked about planting seeds in a fertile field and planting seeds on a road, and which ones would grow, you know, which one has the wholesome environment. When we understand Pratika Samapada and we apply it to the present moment, what we're doing is we're changing from the I see this, I want this different, to mind awareness, direct awareness in the present moment. So in your life, you should not think of the I. What you should do is essentially just every moment, stay in the present moment. So in the present moment, there's no you. There's just this moment. And in this moment, everything that's appearing there is perfectly appearing. So it is in the manner of how we approach the practice, and then we keep it in this way. So the mind is there, it's focused, and it sees this. It does not need to judge it. And quite honestly, if you become the judge of the world, then you become the judge of conceptualization, or the supreme conceptualizer, which you think you are. I mean, that's the self, it's ignorance. Rather, what we do is we bring our attention to the present moment and become aware of what is arising. And underneath all of this is the realization that it's perfectly arising. And through body, speech, and mind, whatever is arising and our reaction to it will have an impact on the environment. And so if we smile, people smile. If we scowl, people will scowl. If we get angry, they'll get angry. If in the future, the people, they'll be afraid to talk to you because you're going to get angry at them. Doesn't look pretty. It scares people. So we are aware, moment to moment, making adjustments. Because in the beginning, we're going this way between the future and the past, and then we can lock into the present. So this is how you should do this. Rather than to judge it, let the judging go. The judging belongs to the past, or the judging may belong to the future. Next time I see this person, I'm going to give them, something. Just forget about that. Just stay in the present moment. Practice that, okay?
Fantastic.
And teach people in Vancouver this too, all right?
Thank you so much.
I'm still waiting to go up there.
Thank you. Next, it will be Chi.
Okay, thank you. Give me this opportunity to ask that question. Would you please to share us your story, how you have strong faith in Buddhism, and how you have the strong faith in Sifu Sheng Yen? Thank you.
Shifu and I came together not by accident. We came together because I was looking for a master and he was looking for a disciple. And it's a long story, but essentially, to make it very, very short, is that he sent somebody out. He came to Los Angeles, sent somebody out to look for me. And meanwhile, I was with a different master, but I knew that this master was not the master I was looking for. But it was something that it brought the two of us together. Like I say, it's a long story, very incredible story, but it came together in this way. The faith that I had was one, as I've mentioned in a different class, about Kuan Yin Bodhisattva, that I actually received assistance from Kuan Yin Bodhisattva during my first retreat. And in that, I had made the vow that I would continue tirelessly to present the Dharma on behalf of all sentient beings. So that faith came about from that, and having a deep faith in what Shifu was saying, and a deep faith in the Dharma, and faith eventually in myself to be able to say, I could do this. I could do this. If all these ancient masters did it, I can do it too. And this is a very important way to understand things. Master Ling Chi said, don't put in any faith in those masters of old and hold them up to high esteem and everything. He said, you do it. You do it. You're the one that has to do it. So you have to develop this faith. And there's not one of you that can't do this. No, not one of you that can penetrate to the supreme truth. You just have to keep making the faith and draw energy from your intrinsic energy, your intrinsic power that you have. You already have the Buddha mind. So all you have to do is figure out how to access it, you know, and connect into it. Okay. Okay. Next question.
Next will be Kitty.
Thank you for that very inspirational response to the last question, Gilbert. My question is about the 1250 bhikshus in chapter 1 of the Diamond Sutra. And what I was wondering about that was, as I mentioned last week, I'm reading the Lotus Sutra, and in that the Buddha was teaching to all these mythical beings and all these different classes of beings, not just human beings. And in this particular one, it's just for the bhikshus. Is there any reason for that?
Because those bhikshus, especially the 1250, they had already attained a very high level of understanding. That there was a retinue from Kasyapa and his brothers that came, and they brought all of these 1250, but they were already at a certain level that they could understand this. So what's happening here is in the Lotus Sutra, as he's presenting this very, very profound Dharma. And in this profound Dharma, he wants everyone to be able to follow along. So that's how you should give the reverence to the Lotus Sutra, in terms of seeing that this is something that is very, very deep, and that is why. And that's why you see the same retinue here, the 1250. Sometimes they'll say 1250, and then they'll say all these other people that came, and then kings and Dharma kings and Nagas, like dragons and other things that will appear, and then laity, you know, whoever, you know, they'll set the stage as to who this is for, and they're precisely setting out who the sutra is for, or who could obtain a better benefit. This Lotus Sutra.
Would you say they were all arhants? Would you say that all these 1250 had reached some stage, whereas in other sutras they're talking about everyone who's a bodhisattva like us? Anyone?
Yes. The thing is that I was going to say is that because the Lotus Sutra was one of the last teachings of the Sutra Muni for Shakyamuni Buddha, and in this teaching of the Lotus Sutra, it was one where it was a lot deeper in terms of a presentation, and so that's why there's an emphasis there of who is in the audience, and who is he directing this to, and saying, okay, if you really want to fathom what is here, it's not to the exclusion of others, but you have to elevate yourself, your practice, to be able to benefit from the sutra, that your practice has to improve. You have to really sincerely explore what is being presented here. Okay, so kind of an interesting thing that you did catch that, and so that's good. Okay.
So we have Ming Hao. He has one question, and then Julia will ask the last questions because of the time constraint. And if anyone has more questions, can post on Gilbert's mind blog. Sorry. So his question is, how does impermanent relate to Buddha nature and emptiness?
Again, it's what we talk about. We have the understanding that this world is a dream. It is what we call transient, constantly changing, and so we begin with this idea of impermanence. We begin with the idea of something. If something is born, something will die. but in fact, it isn't born or die because it's nevertheless an illusion. That illusion is part of mind. Even though it's an illusion, the mind does not discriminate and say that this is sacred or this is profane. It just simply sees things in this way because it is impermanent. So when we begin to do that, that's your first step to see that things change. This is why Shakyamuni Buddha bothered him so much when he went into the city and he saw old age, sickness, and death. He went, what is this? Wait, this is not what it looks like at the palace, where he was shielded by the palace guards under the instruction of his father prevented him from seeing. And so in this way, when we see it, we understand that this world is impermanent. If we have health, we will not enjoy health for the entirety of our life unless we were born and then died in an accident instantly. But that too is impermanence. So when we see things, we see it in this way. So that gives us a beginning to erode the reliance on this habitual world that seems to have been built, but it is, as the ancients talked about, the horns of a hare, or a castle built in the sky. There's no foundation to it. And so this is important to look into impermanence. Okay, next one.
Thank you. Julia.
Hi, Gilbert. This is Julia. Hi, everyone. So my question to you, what struck me in this very first paragraph is that the Buddha, washed his feet, he straightened his clothes, and he sat down, and then he directed his, not attention, but the awareness. So I perceived awareness as like awareness all around you. But in this case, it was like, he was, directing his awareness. So can you comment on this? So this was like, it's a selective awareness?
This is actually, it's a very, very good question, and it's one that I addressed before I gave the class. And the awareness is one that I am aware of everything going around in here. I was aware of a car driving by, I'm aware of the sun coming in from the right side, the warmth of the room, the quietness right now. I'm aware of that. I'm aware that my cell phone's saying I only have 20% battery, but it doesn't interfere with my awareness as I'm turning my awareness to carry out function. So this is different. So the awareness is still there. If somebody came behind the Buddha and went like this to him, he would be aware of that. Okay, he'd be aware, but it doesn't interfere with his function. And in that moment, he's turning his function to the crowd. So hopefully that will help you understand, but it doesn't mean to the exclusion of everything else. That awareness is there, but the awareness of his function in that moment. And that's why Red Pine was so awed about that, and understanding what Subhuti was doing, where he was like, wow, he's really got it going. So hopefully that will help you understand that. So the awareness that I give here, I'm turning my awareness to the group, but not to the exclusion of everything else around me. You can feel everything. You can feel the decay of a flower, the growth of the leaves, moment to moment changes in the light in the room. If a cloud passes by, all of that one is capable of being aware of, yet the function brings forth an awareness to this group. It is absolutely amazing. You can feel your toes, your socks, your shoes, everything. It doesn't interfere with anything because the mind is in a state of equanimity. Okay, that should help you.
Thank you.
Be like that.
Thank you, Gilbert. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Please join palm and bow. Amitofo. Next time we have the next on this series, and then we look forward to more.
I hope I'll contact them, or they can contact me so we can extend out the series or set some new dates for it. I hope that we can do that. I just didn't realize how I had to be honest in the presentation of the Diamond Sutra to study so much, to present it to you in a way in which it would be of benefit to you. And I think if you stay with this your understanding of Buddha Dharma and is going to increase tremendously. Right now, in terms of how you're being brought to this, I don't think you really even understand how profound, what I'm presenting, and that you're still able to understand it. So I hope you never really realize that, and just continue to study. Okay. And we will see you next week.